Hello, welcome to Cheesehead Gardening for the first episode of
2012.
Exactly.
And it's been a warm spring and now it's summer. So what are we doing in this episode, Jen?
I don't know, it's something sweet.
Sugary?
Sugary. No.
Sweet like me?
Yes. Because you're so sweet.
You know, sometimes. Sweet like honey? Ooh, pure honey. We got this from Mr. Schomisch that you will see in just a minute.
So our whole episode is going to be about urban beekeeping, which was very, very interesting.
It's awesome. Yeah, you're going to like this.
Yeah, you're going to like it. And then you're going to want to get a hive.
Yeah.
Unless you're allergic to bees.
And then you just get an EpiPen.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Hi, we're here today with both John Schomisch and Junior John Schomisch. And Mr. Schomisch is going to show us his beehive. They raise bees. And John has he's our special guest today as well, his bumblebee oil pastel.
And it's actually a honeybee.
Yes, it's a honeybee, right, John?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So, John, you're going to show us what some of the materials and tools that you have for honeybees.
Sure.
And why, right?
Sure. I am what you call an urban beekeeper. And actually they do this in New York City. They recently lifted a ban. Bees are really nice. They're really beneficial to nature. To work with them, you need to be calm and collected. And it's a fun hobby, and it helps pollinate all the trees and flowers. And the reason they're so good at it is bees are efficient, and if they find a good source of pollen or nectar, they go back and do a little dance and communicate with the rest of the bees, and they will go back and forth to that same source until it's exhausted. The fortunate part about that is if it happens to be orange trees, they'll get all the orange trees. If it happens to be tulips, they'll go do all the tulips. Whatever it takes to get it done. You probably have to edit this because I don't think tulips are bulbs, right? I don't know if
they are, but that's okay.
Anyway, pick whatever flowers you have, and on any given day when it's nice and warm. The other day, the bees were pollinating our tomato plants. In the spring, they pollinate the fruit trees that we have on the property. They'll pollinate pears, peaches, cherries, apples, you name it. They like certain things better than others. They actually go up and they'll get sap out of the maple trees early in the year. And they also make a product called propolis, which is like a glue that they use to glue the hive together. And what that is it's made out of resin and various things. You'll actually see them on evergreens. And most people think, what's a honeybee doing on an evergreen?
Oh, really?
That's why. They're getting some sap. So some of the equipment that you have as a beekeeper would be a suit. And the funny thing is when I first started out, I wouldn't even wear the suit. As long as you have your arms covered and your pants tucked into your socks, because the little ones will crawl up your leg and sting you in the leg, you can do that. You can put on the suit. I'm not going to do it for you.
Do they have to be white? Because I've always seen them wear white.
They don't have to be white, but the studies show that light colors are less threatening to the bee.
Okay.
And so when I do it with my neighbor, sometimes he wears dark colors and they go after him, and they don't go after me. But they really censor the pheromones and how nervous you are, so you have to be calm, and that's what got me into it.
Just like dogs, they know. Yep.
It's like a Zen-like thing. The calmer you are, the less the bees bother you. If you don't bump them, there's no problem. Now, probably the most important tool in a beekeeper's arsenal is what we call the veil. This is a helmet and a veil. This keeps the bees off your face, and it's a lot easier to work. And when it's 80 degrees out and you're in your full suit and your full helmet, it gets quite hot and it gets uncomfortable. But this gives you some space to see. But you still can get stung through the mesh, and it happens sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I was telling you earlier, I got bit last year through the face and had some problems as a result. The other big tool for a beekeeper is a smoker. You fill this up with wood and you put some leaves in it so it smokes, and when you puff the smoke into the hive, it calms the bees down, and instinctually they will go down and get a little taste of honey, and that allows you to work on the top of the hive. And you'll see some video of the hive in action. There's a lower box called a brood box. That's where the queen lives and raises the young. And then above that, there's like a little plastic screen called the queen separator. The worker bees can go through that screen, but the queen cannot. And so what will happen is they will go and put honey in the upper boxes, and that's where we get the honey that we eat. Because you wouldn't want the honey with, with little eggs laid in it and everything else. So depending on how you do the method of honey extraction that you do, or the beekeeping that you do, you have a couple of different things that can happen. One is you can run 2 brood boxes so that they can survive over the winter by eating their honey. Or you can do what we've done in recent years, which is get what they call a nuke, or a nuclear hive. It comes with 5 frames, and then at the end of the season, we give our hives to a honey farmer we know who puts them on a flatbed down to Florida, and then they use them for pollinating cucumbers and orange groves and various crops down in Florida. Without bees, we'd be lost. We'd have no reproduction of plants except manually. And in fact, in China, they do hire people, because labor's cheap, to go out in certain orchards with a brush and manually pollinate the plants, which is just got to be horrible. As far as the ease of keeping bees, my friends and I say we're the best hands-off beekeepers ever. You can be as hyper-technical or as hands-off as you want. But by and large, if you keep everything clean, they take care of themselves. I've never had a disease. I've never had a problem. I've had some hives not survive the winter. I've had some hives swarm. Now, you may have heard of swarms. Not necessarily a bad thing. When there's too many bees in a colony and they need to move, the queen will take off with half the hive, but the rest of the hive, instead of making cells that are vertical, will make them horizontal, will make them vertical, and the workers will feed those bees with the larvae, what they call royal jelly from the queen, the existing queen, and that will end up creating a new queen. And in fact, my neighbor's hive swarmed this spring, but it's still producing. So people say, oh, there's swarms. But because we had such a strange early warm spring, they started reproducing very quickly. And the life cycle of a bee is about 28 days from the time the egg is laid until the new bee emerges. And the old bees will continue to work until they wear out, and eventually they'll fly out from the hive and they'll just die. But they have various little cute appendages that you can look up on the internet. They have little pollen baskets on their legs. They have
and hair, isn't that where they hold the pollen on their legs?
And they also have a honey stomach. So there's one stomach for eating and the other stomach is for the nectar, because some people say,
I wish I had a honey stomach.
Yeah, well, you don't want to be eating, bee puke. I mean,
and that's what it is, right? It's like bee vomit.
Well, they say,
but it tastes pretty good.
They say bee vomit, but it's like I said, that second honey stomach is strictly for the nectar, and then they use their wings and their body heat to actually just evaporate it down to like 10% of the volume. So in the winter, when you're getting them ready, you actually give them. You'll have equal parts of sugar and water, so it's like 8 cups sugar to a quart of water, and you feed that in a tray so that they can lay on extra nutrition. Since I've taken to sending them down to Florida for vacation for the winter, we don't have that problem anymore.
But when you collect the honey, you can't collect it all, or you would kill the hive, right?
Correct.
Take some, or how does that work?
Well, see, that's why if you're leaving it here, that's why you have that brood box I was talking about. They will fill that up with pollen. They will fill that up with honey for their stores. And the funny thing is, when they get cold, they're warm-blooded. They will keep that hive right around 98 degrees, just like a human, even when it's below 0. So we will wrap them with some styrofoam and some black plastic to try to keep it warm, because even 10 degrees can make a difference in the winter. And if they're a millimeter away from food and they're too cold to move, they'll die. And the way they stay alive throughout the winter is they create a ball and they flex their muscles. And just like when we work out and we sweat, well, the bees make warmth. and then the colder ones from the outside move to the inside, and they keep rotating. It's a total
penguins.
Yeah, total buddy system.
I love it.
And so if you don't do that, if you don't watch them and then by spring start feeding them, that's another thing that happened this spring. One of the hives that overwintered, maybe just a week too late, they died. But my neighbors survived, so we started feeding them right away.
Okay.
And then, so we had to buy some extra hives this year. Another very important tool for a beekeeper is a hive tool. It looks simply like a flat pry bar. What this allows you to do is to go in, take off the top of the hive to get at it, and then you can lever out the frames to inspect them. And I'm going to show you an empty hive, because one thing you're going to laugh about, or maybe think I'm crazy, is that as a beekeeper, I can be killed by the bees. I don't want to scare you. I have been bitten 30, 40 times while I've been keeping bees and never had a problem. But last year I got stung and started feeling funny after about a half an hour, and ended up passing out and having to go in the hospital. And now I carry one of these, which is called an EpiPen, and that's
I have training, so if you fall down, I know how to.
Well, there you go. And the thing is, my neighbor is fine with it. The honey farmer I know has been bitten thousands of times. They tell you right in the books, you never know when it's going to arise, and each time it can get worse. But you might say, well, what are you, nuts? Well, in the past, I've helped my neighbor with his hives and done a lot of the work, and so now he's returning the favor to me. And that's the coolest thing about beekeepers, is that they are, I've never met one, even when I bought honey from the store, if it's a local place, you can call them up and ask for help. They'll drop what they're doing to help you. You know, so
nice.
It's really a very, very cool community, probably not unlike master gardeners who like to help each other out too. And so, you know, I've enjoyed the hobby from the point of view it's good for the environment. I no longer use chemicals on my lawn. You know, when you have, you know, we produce fruit on the property here that we eat. We have peaches and apples and pears. We have our own honey. I mean, it's a little bit that you can do in town. And now the clover in my lawn is something to be happy about. The bees also make honey out of dandelions. So why would I want to poison something that helps them? And I'm just not a lawn guy, but I'm thinking if somebody said dandelions were the most beautiful flower in the world, everyone would be planting dandelions.
So what do you do with your honey then? Do you sell it? Do you give it to art teachers? And what do you do?
Well, I might be inclined to give it to an art teacher or the camera person. You know, you never know. But I give it I give it away.
Friends and family.
Yeah, much like Johnny Appleseed. Now last year, you know, a gallon of honey weighs about 12 pounds. And last year I got 263 pounds of honey.
Wow.
So just over 20 gallons. But it's not that way every year. And of course, now that I only run one hive because of my anaphylaxis experience, I'm not giving away as much as I used to. But, you know, this has been a strange year. We're at the end of June, we've only got 2 supers on. Last year by this time I had 3 and I was working on the 4th. So it's so strange, depending on the weather and what the rain does and then what flowers bloom, makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, depending on what they eat makes a difference too. We have really good honey here because, like I say, clover, maple trees, and the dandelions. Some places, you've heard the song by Van Morrison, "She's as sweet as Tupelo honey." Anyway, Tupelo is a tree down in Georgia, and that's really tasty honey, as is orange blossom. So
it'll take on, like I've seen lavender honey for sale. It'll take on the plant or the tree.
And so a lot of times what they'll do is honey, or the commercial beekeepers, they want to go pollinate a field. They'll keep the bees from going out so they get more or less hungry. Then they'll put it right in the middle of the pea field or right in the middle of the cucumber field, because some of those things aren't necessarily what the bee's first choice would be.
Right.
But anyway, so in that case, you know, you might not know that they pollinated cucumber, but like you say, certain things that are stronger, like lavender or citrus, will take on that flavor. Or buckwheat, you know, certain honeys are darker and certain honeys are lighter. More of your floral honeys are generally lighter, but like buckwheat and that sort of thing will be darker, and it tastes different. But it's all sweet, and it's all based on sugar.
Here, tell us
what
part of this hive this is.
Well, earlier in your video, you saw a working hive. I just wanted to show you what the top of it looks like. Again, because of my anaphylactic shock experience, I'm not going to go and get stung, although for any of you people out there, it'd probably be okay. When you have a hive, you build up these boxes, and you may see them on the side of the road. The top ones are called honey supers, short for superstructure. They're a little smaller than a brood box, but this will give you an idea of how the bees store their honey. So what you do, if you'd use your smoker, and you would give it there's usually a little door or a little vent. You'd blow the smoke in there. You take your trusty hive tool, you get under the edge, and even though this has been in storage, it's gotten a little heated. Now, you don't want to necessarily strike a beehive hard. That drives them nuts. You're always trying to be calm and smooth. So you lever it off, you set it off to the side, and where the bees store the honey, these are called frames. And so when you use the tool, you can lever it up and you pull out a frame, and this is called a frame, and there's a plastic foundation, and they actually draw out the wax. And this is one from last year. And then to extract the honey, you scrape off the top and then of the caps of wax, and you put it in a machine that spins it around. And it has to be warm, so you generally do it in August. And Erin, you had mentioned earlier, well, if you take the honey, will you kill the bees? You will if you don't leave them enough food, because that's their food. But they make more than they need, and they're willing to share. And so what we do is we wait until the end of August or so, at least in this area, until everything is done blooming. And then at that time we take the top off, and when you can feed the bees, and then you can use your extraction. And these are called 9-frame boxes. Some come with 10, but the nice thing about 9 frames is it gives you a little more space, because the bees will draw honey on both sides, and they get so packed, it's hard to rip these things out when they're full of honey.
You get your fingers in there too, right?
And so maybe at the end of the season, if you want to do round 2, I'll have you come by when we're doing extraction, and then you can actually see what it looks like. But for now, be a honey, hug your beekeeper. Bees are kind of funny. When it's really cold, they're less active, just like people. And the warmer it is, the more active they are. But if it's really hot and humid, like those 93-degree days you get with 99% humidity, when you'd be crabby, the bees are crabby too. And that's the last time you want to work with them, is when they're crabby. The funny thing is, a hint for your watchers, if you ever find yourself being attacked by bees, run at least 200 feet and zigzag, because they will go back and tell the hive your last location. So you don't want to be at your last location. But generally after a couple hundred feet of zigzagging, they lose interest. But we call that the honey shuffle. And we laugh at each other when we do it. But it's really been a wonderful hobby, and it's good for the environment, and you get a great byproduct of the honey.
And where can you get one of the houses? Like, do you buy those online? Where did you get yours?
You can buy them from a variety of places. I actually bought my equipment from a former beekeeper who was going out of business because he wanted to raise chickens. And so now they don't let me do that here. But if you wanted to order it online, a company with a local presence down in Watertown is called Dadant, D-A-D-A-N-T, and they have a catalog, and you can do it online. And if you buy used equipment, you can get all set up, including your bees, for a couple $100. And if you buy it all new, for $300-400, you can get a couple hives totally set up. Oh. When I first started out, I think I was into 2 hives plus the packages of bees for about $240. And you can get what they call packages, which are 3 or 4, a couple pounds of bees, which is 3,000 or 4,000 bees in a cage with a queen that you put in your own hive, or you can buy the nuclear hive, which is when somebody else has done all the work. And got this hive established for you. And it's kind of neat. When you have these queens, they come in an itty-bitty screen cage, and you have to put the queens inside with the bees for 3 days till they get used to her scent. Because if you let it out too soon, they'll kill it. They'll kill the queen as an invader. But once they accept that queen and take her down into the hive, then they'll kill for her and attack anything that comes around. They're a very clean animal, a clean insect. They go ahead and they, if there's junk in the hive or a mouse tries to put a nest in there, they'll sting them, and then they'll clean out all the schmutz and get it out of the hive.
Cool. So this would be really interesting for me to start, but I probably shouldn't because I have 2 dogs. Would you agree?
No, I wouldn't agree. The funny thing is most people have no idea I've had hives on the property. I have never been stung standing here like this in front of the hives, and I used to have another hive 20 yards away. I've never been stung by my own bees. The only time I got stung was when I was taking them apart last year to extract, and in that instance you're breaking it down to its base element, and no matter how much smoke you use and how quiet you are, you're going to disturb them. And they ended up, like I said, when it stung me through my veil on my cheek. So anyway, no, my dogs don't bother it. They don't bother the animals. I drive by here with the lawnmower. They don't bother it. That's not to say you can't be dumb, but by and large, my kids have never got stung. My dog has never been stung. We have more problems with the wasps or the ground bees or the mud daubers. A lot of those different kinds of insects are often called bees, and even you yourself said, oh, it's a picture of a bumblebee. Well, that's actually a different kind of bee. And the funny thing is if you're looking at a, now I'm forgetting the name. What's the big fuzzy bee? Is that the bumblebee?
Mm-hmm.
That is
I think
the bumblebee.
so.
Bumblebees, honeybees will lose their stinger after they sting you. Bumblebees do not. So you can get stung by a bumblebee 10 times.
Really?
Really. I didn't know that until it happened to the neighbor found a bumblebee nest in their soffit. And we discovered that the hard way. Luckily it wasn't me. But honeybees, they sting once and they're done. And one of the friends I keep bees with has an arthritic elbow, and they call it apitherapy, apis for the bee. But he takes a little forceps and takes a bee and then lets it sting his elbow. And you get a cortisol reaction, and it makes your back feel better. And before I became allergic to them, I used to do the same thing on my neck.
Wow.
And depending on how long you let them sting, their stinger will come out, and the little gland will keep pumping. And of course, the longer you leave it on, the stronger the response, the more venom gets in you. But people have been using bees for various means of health, and the honey itself is antiseptic. My daughter has very sensitive skin, and she was having some skin rash and hives, and so we put her in the tub with a cup of honey, and it makes your skin smooth, and it doesn't burn.
Ooh, beauty
and
product ideas from you. I love it.
And you can
awesome.
You can use the beeswax to make soap. You can, and like I say, even for infections, because it's naturally antiseptic, they found honey in the pharaoh's tombs that was still edible.
Really?
And the cool thing about honey is if it hardens, if you ever see it's all sugary, all you have to do is warm it up and reliquefy it, and it's fine to eat. It never goes bad. You just don't want to heat it over 113 degrees because that'll kill the enzymes.
Okay.
And part that's healthy. Now the way we do it here, you'll have to come back for another time when we're extracting. We use a real coarse filter, and we leave everything natural. You'll see that called raw honey or lightly filtered honey. That's what you want. You don't want pasteurized honey. There's not many people out there that do it. And if you can buy local honey, I usually find it's better. It's got the traces of the pollen. I actually believe that my seasonal allergies have gotten better over the years because I eat so much honey. I used to take pills. Now I just use a Flonase for my nose, but I don't take the pills anymore since I've been eating honey.
Yeah, I heard something like a tablespoon of honey a day is supposed to help your allergies.
Oh my gosh, this is so awesome.
And that's what I do. So anyway, I know this is a 10-minute deal, but look it up on the internet, and you are going to learn so much. I mean, there's nothing not to like about bees. And the thing is bees usually get, just like we all have bad brothers-in-law or relatives that make the family look bad, it's wasps and other types of stinging insects that make the poor little honeybee look bad.
Yeah.
Honeybee is the hardest working bee in insect business, and has really excellent product.
Well, hey, thanks so much. Jen and I want to thank you for being our guest, and maybe we can come back in fall if it's okay with you.
That would be great. And watch some extraction in action.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
John, so do you have any nicknames for your wife?
Yeah, I call her Honey. She's very sweet.